Shelley Beatty.
Present.
Mark Matheson.
Here.
Linda Basinger.
Present.
Dennis Anderson.
Here.
Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Amy Wilhite.
Here.
Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Jesse Buss.
Here.
Gordon Wilson. Barbara Rankin. Stephen Haberbeck.
Here.
Karen Morey.
Here.
Harris Gwynn. Bill McConnell.
Here.
Gary Fergus.
Here.
Vern Johnson.
Here.
Georgia Reagan.
Yes.
And Brian Boyce.
No. Okay. We want to welcome Georgia and Vern. Welcome and Shelley. Those are the three new that we have here. Welcome to the CIC. And we want to take a moment and publicly thank Faith Leith. She has resigned to the CIC. She has other commitments that are taking her time and needed to pick and choose what was best for her. So she has been our advocate out there at National Night Out and the safety meetings, helping us with the booth. We'll try to get her to help us again. She's great go-to for that. So did you bring a card? The card?
I will send it around after our meeting.
Okay.
Thank you card.
Yeah, but after our meeting, everybody's going to be gone.
I'll get it in a few minutes.
Well, I wanted to do a thank you card to Faith because of
Not here, but it's in the building.
all the time she has put in. So we will do that. Moving to our presentations, we're going to have a little bit of a change because John got left off of this current. So we'll do 2A will be mapping resources on the city website, and then 2B will be John Lewis and Public Works, and then 2C will be the City Commission biennial goals. So David,
Yes.
turn some time over to you to.
Yeah. Well, thank you. My name is David Knoll. I'm the IT supervisor here at the city, and I supervise the GIS department. And we've built, over the course of many years, some mapping tools online. We have some internal tools, and just wanted to have a chance to show you what some of those are, how you might access them over the web, what they're good for, and answer any questions or dive in a little bit deeper to anything that might come up. So, with that, so on our GIS page, if you click the Maps link, you'll come to our home page essentially for the GIS applications. We have a couple of options for you. One is the PDF map gallery. So from this page, you'll have a selection of PDF maps that you can print and view that are sort of standard PDF maps that we've put together. And are we going? Oh, it helps if you click the left mouse button. So here's a list of all the not all of the PDF maps, but some of the more commonly accessed ones. So if you hover over them, you'll get an option to open that map. A comprehensive plan might be of interest, so if you click on that, we'll talk about the comp plan a little bit, what some of these zones and the plan designations mean, and then you can download the map. It'll simply open it in your browser, and you can save it or view from there. Some of the other maps that are available here, we have geologic layers from Dogami, landslide hazards, earthquake hazards, enterprise zones. This pretty much runs the gamut of some of the more commonly asked questions of, hey, do you have a map for? Neighborhood associations, very similar to the zoning and comp plan designations. But if you don't know what neighborhood association you're in, you can check the map. So that's a quick overview of the PDF gallery, and there's many more available here if you want to explore. Back on the GIS homepage, we also have the GIS apps gallery. And this is a more dynamic presentation. So this will actually bring you into a tool where if you click on, let's say, the 2014 traffic counts and open the app, you'll be presented with a dynamic map, and you can, in this case, ask a very simple question. what are the traffic counts on certain intersections. So we've got them all labeled, and just simply by clicking one of the dots, you can see, well, it's the traffic counter 129, here's the intersection, here's the traffic counts northbound and southbound. And that's all that this app does. It's a very simple application. We've found that some mapping applications benefit from having a lot of tools built into it, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then others are just really stripped down. For instance, am I within the city limits? Click on the app. You can then type in your address. And I use my grandmother's address just for old time's sake. And sure enough, are you in the city? Yes or no? Yes. A couple of other applications. We've put up a more dynamic marijuana business regulations where we've put buffers around the parks and the schools. So if somebody's interested in getting a business license, they can refer to this map for information. Partition plats. You can query an area and find all the partition plat information. Property reports. I'll show you the property report. This is a quick way to get a lot of information off of a property. So once again, you'll type in an address, say go, and it returns essentially a lot of different data layers. So if you scroll down, you'll see all the different data layers available, but you can also collapse this. So sure enough, here's the parcel number, the address, city, county, collapse this, and you can get the assessment and value information. Collapse this, land use and planning, here's your zoning, comp plan, neighborhood associations, etc. And we've just, we've tried to load this up in a format where it's easy to find what you need, but it's not too overwhelming. So if you don't need some information, just go ahead and close these tabs. Service districts, census information, overlay information, geologic hazards, steep slopes, a lot of the planning regulatory questions that come up, these are contained in the overlay layers. Status information and permits. So that's an example of one of our mini apps. The aerial photos I do want to show. This is one of our cooler apps. So we've loaded up basically left and right photos, and on the left you can see that we're viewing the 2008 photos. On the right, we're seeing 2015. And it's a simple bar that shows both areas. You can zoom in, compare and contrast, and pan around at your leisure. One of the more common usages for this is to change one of the photos to the flood information back in '96. And sure enough, you can see that there was water everywhere.
Water everywhere.
And we've loaded up as many aerial photos as we can. Obviously, some of the earlier ones are going to be black and white, not ortho-rectified, very poor quality compared to what we're getting now. We're getting 3-inch resolution photos now. Let's see, how am I doing sticking to my script here? So a lot of different little mini apps on this main page. So back on the GIS homepage, I did want to show you the main OC Web Maps application. So this is where you're going to find the most data, have the most flexibility to use the mapping application, turn layers off and on, ask questions, etc. So I'd encourage you to, if one of those mini apps didn't answer your questions, go to OC Web Maps and likely it's there. Most folks you included are probably very familiar with how to navigate mapping programs. But we've set it up similar to most others where there's tabs across the top. On the query tab, you always have these navigations. So if you have your hand, you can pan, scroll your mouse wheel, you can zoom in. You can zoom back to the original extents, zoom in again. Or ask a simple question just by querying a point. Click, and on the left-hand side, it shows the tax lot that I just clicked in. You can, again, click on any one of these links to get a property report, an advanced property report. The difference with the advanced property report, you can choose some of the layers. You can turn on maybe street view and permit information, maybe overlay information. It creates the report for you in a nicely formatted Google Street View. Oh, I picked too large of a property. It didn't really have a street. So it shows all of the overlay, the political boundaries, assessment information that we have available for that property. Just close this. Back on the query, you can do some buffering and snapping. If you're interested in more information or learning more about these tools, there's some help here available, or you're welcome to call me or Chris Dunlop or Katie here at the city. Be happy to help you out. On the next tab, Find Features. Again, you have these navigation tools available. And, well, what are you interested in finding? An address? How about a tax lot? A park, perhaps. So you can either query a park by using this tool and finding it in this drop-down list, or you can also search in this for Oak Tree Park, Oak Tree Terrace. There's several ways to do everything these days. Didn't like Oak Tree, let's do Chapin. So here's Chapin Park. There's also other features like as-builts that are listed that have associations with Chapin Park. But in this case, if you just wanted to see Chapin Park, zoom to the feature. Sure enough, there it is. Again, you can zoom out to get a reference of where it is. On the Measure tab, this comes in handy if you want to do a quick query. If you query one of the tax lots, it'll give you the dimensions. But this is a quick way to maybe measure the perimeter of some other area that you're interested in, like a polygon. So if you want to know the area of this entire block section, you can highlight it, double-click to close. It gives you the dimensions of each side as well as the area, the perimeter total. You can snap to certain layers as you do those measurements also, or just simply measure a line. It's that far. Under the Draw tab, the draw tools in this application are a little rudimentary, but you have the option to draw a point, put some text in, line, maybe an arrow pointing to this property. You can then add some text. Say, my house. And from here, if you wanted to edit this feature, you can change some styles or draw other elements. Under the Print tab, if you like this map, and I wouldn't take this at first draft, but if you like this and want to print it, simply hit the print button or print map. And it asks you what kind of extents you want to show. So here you can say, well, this is the extent that I want to show in red. I don't want to lock it. I want to kind of pan around a little bit. Okay, I'm going to center your house right on the edge, or right in the center. And then you can lock it in again. You can choose different size paper, PDF or some other image format, resolution, and map scale. So let's say we wanted to change it a little bit to 2400. That's the scale it's going to print at. And at the bottom, simply hit print. This will generate a PDF that, again, you can save after opening. There's your map.
The one nice thing about these maps, well, there's lots of nice things, but part of them is if you have layers on, like you want to know the natural resource overlay district or zoning. If you have zoning clicked in the legend, you'll see what each of those colors mean for the zoning. So you'll see some coding there to interpret the map.
Yes, absolutely. So perfect timing. We can jump over to the layer list here and find our zoning. That happens to be under land use and planning. We turn on the zones. Need to go click our layer list. So to turn on a layer, this main layer menu needs to be activated. And then under the layer list, scroll down until you find the layers that you want to turn on. In this case, it's going to be zoning and maybe the text. Zoom out a little bit. And if you printed the map from here, the layer list would appear in the legend. Print. Yes. Yeah. The more layers you have on, the longer it takes to generate some maps, but eventually it does present you with a map and a legend. I'll finish up the tabs here under Other Data. You can do a couple of things under Data. You can actually upload shapefiles or Google Earth KMZs if you want. Load them into the layer list. You can close this Print Map option. And if you wanted to upload some data, simply browse for it. I'm going to select a basic layer. Let's turn on buildings. So we already have buildings loaded in the map, but if you had a special layer that you could created, you could simply just add it yourself to the map. Processes. Oh, there's only about 24,000 of these.
Okay. Back to his 12.
And if it's too large of a layer, you can quit. All right, well, let's see if we can proceed on. So the other option under Other Data is the Street Maps view. So, okay, so it's now added the buildings. It's warning me that it's got 20,000 of them. I'm going to cancel that just for today's presentation. You guys know what building footprints look like. So when you hit the Street View and Bing Maps view, it gives you the map in the upper view, and then Google Street View on the left and Bing on the right. It also shows you where you are, and you can actually move this point to a different location. Move Bing to the same. You can center the map on both of these properties. If you don't like Bing, well, you can go. You can see the road, or the automatic toggling between Bird's Eye and the overview, or go straight to Bird's Eye. If you don't like one of them, you can turn it off. And again, use this just like regular Street View, and it moves your location on the map. If you want to move faster, simply drag the dot, and you'll go to that location. I'll close the other data and talk a little bit about the layer list on the left-hand side here. So this is just a table of contents of layers. We've got individual map layers here. I showed you a little bit of the land use and planning layers. We'll come back to those. At the bottom, we've loaded base map information. Let's see, let's turn off the land use and planning. I think I'll clear all of my features. So here's Oregon City. At the bottom of the layer list, you have a base map that just gives a little context to the city. You can also turn on aerial photos from 99. Maybe you want to see the 2015s as well. We're about to load the 2016s. And from here, each of these layers has a transparency toggle. So recall that we turned on the 99 photos underneath. You can fade out the 2015s and view the 2015s, 1999, etc. And you can do that with any number of these layers. In fact, you can do it with any of the layers that are listed above. We have most of our aerial photos listed down below. USGS quad maps, shaded relief, more basic hill shade information. And then the more standard layers that might be of interest for planning and neighborhoods. Urban growth boundary, city limits. We've listed some of our city projects like as-builts. If you're interested in getting an as-built, you can turn this on, query the as-built layer, ask the city for the as-built numbers that are returned. There are a lot of as-builts, so it's worth zooming in a little bit before you turn them on. And from here, under the Find Features or the Query, you can just say, well, what is here? It shows you the as-builts, and you can then request, well, I'd like to see as-built 5093.
What's an as-built? I hate to sound stupid.
No, we were wondering the same question.
Talking about.
Construction plans, basically, for
Things that are already in the ground, things that the Public Works have built in the street, that's an as-built, or a record drawing. So
Okay.
it's something that's been recorded by the Public Works as being something in the ground. Correct, John? That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. So another major category are these hazards and flood info. If you wanted to see some of the flood information and it wasn't being displayed automatically, turn on the hazards and floods. You can see the 96 flood inundation line, and then several other FEMA layers, landslide information, geologic hazards again, slope categories. One interesting thing to contrast is the 100-year floodplain that almost matches the 96 inundation line. The solid blue is the 100-year FEMA line, and then the hatched is the 96. In places, they are dramatically different. There are different
Twice 96.
inundation areas. But again, it's layers are up to you to turn on and ask questions about. Above hazards, water and natural resources. This is our Title 13, Title 3, NROD layers. And then we come to community. These are mostly points. If schools, parks, libraries, you want to see some features, they're available here. Land use and planning. So we had earlier turned on the zones in this area. Let's turn those off. And some of the other layers that are available here include vacant lands, have they been built up yet or not, shadow plats, subdivisions. If you're curious where a subdivision is, you can turn these on and do a query, or again, just simply do a search in the search bar. You can also use this I want to menu that has a lot of these options that we've looked at already contained in one place. So again, you can just find an address, find a tax lot, find a permit, print a map. Some of the tools that are available elsewhere, the most popular ones are here. We've got concept plan areas. You ever have a question about where one of them are? There they are. Enterprise zones, and it's easy enough to load up layers by request if we have one. We often do that when staff or the public asks for additional information. Utilities. Again, water, sewer, storm. In detail, it will show all of the features, locations, pipes. If you query these pipes, it'll provide material and width and some historical information. We don't display all information in this public mapping tool. We have an internal tool that we use for employees and developers that we're doing work with that has some additional information, similar to not displaying ownership information on some of the other Metro sites. We follow that model, and we also hide some certain other layers for security purposes. But if you live here, then you know where your utilities are. Transportation, tax lot layers. We've got streets, lights, signals, sidewalk lanes, trails. Under transportation, we saw the building. Well, we didn't quite see the building outlines, but we can turn them on here. It might be useful to show the aerial photos with those. And see how that works for you. We do about an annual review to make sure that we're capturing all the buildings that have either been constructed or demolished. Contours. We've got 10 foot, we've got 2 foot. Streams and hydrology, street names, address points, and I missed the canopy. Natural resources. I think we have the canopy in here. Tree canopy, 2014. So here's our tree canopy.
Find something.
And again, taking the photos. How does it do? Pretty good, but there's always changes. So that's kind of the 39-cent tour through OCMap. Obviously, you can do a deep dive into this and spend a lot of time. And happy to answer any questions now, or if you wanted to contact me or Chris or Katie. I've got a couple of handouts that I can email and forward to the group if anybody's interested.
Does anybody have any questions for David now? Jesse?
I was curious if there's a way to access the primary source information for any of these layers. Like if you go into like this tree canopy layer, does it show, oh, this is a 2014 survey conducted on this date, or is it just kind of entered from time to time?
It depends on the layer. It really does. There's not a lot of metadata available on the public site to the extent that you're talking about, but we could certainly provide answers to individual questions for that. Google Earth, for instance, the Street View, they'll display copyright Google Earth, and they'll have an updated date on it. We don't do that with these layers. We keep metadata elsewhere.
So what you're saying is that even though this data was created by public funds, there's proprietary attachments to it? Because I think that's what Jesse was asking, because I mean, since I've been doing this since 92 and 96, and I started the GIS for City of Milwaukee back in the day, and I've actually converted DXS files for Oregon City back to do your infrastructure GIS mapping 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. This issue of data sharing came up, and it's, if somebody like Jesse wanted to have the source data, he should be able to get that source data because it was done with public funds.
He's welcome to it. We just don't display it on the public site.
So if
to that
somebody
degree.
asks the GIS department for a data dump of your entire GIS data sets, you'd be able to provide that?
It's data that's publicly available, sure.
Okay. Then I'll have to ask you to have a conversation with me later and ask and have you answer why it was denied when I asked for it.
If that
So-
we weren't going to discuss that here.
That's what I
not
just, I
familiar with
think I
that
referred to,
conversation,
that we
so-
can talk to you about it later when I asked for that data set and I was denied.
Okay, Karen,
So-
you have a question?
The contours map didn't help me the other day on something. It's just got the shaded brown lines.
Mhm.
Can I have pinks and purples and greens? And
Well,
I was trying to find an elevation, and the gradations of brown lines weren't visually giving me what I needed.
sure. What might help is the hillshade
I missed that
layer.
one.
That is this hillshade here.
Okay.
So if you turn that on and you're zoomed out a little bit. Oh, sorry. Hillshade. Shade of relief. So let's turn the photos off. And what else do we have
We're
going
doing
on here?
personal demos now, huh?
We've got address points turned on.
There you go.
So if you zoom out, this will give
That's
you a little
better.
bit of terrain perspective. The contours, we've chosen colors to be the most helpful possible, given all of the layers that are loaded up. Once they're loaded into the system, there's not a whole lot of style modifications that you can do to each one.
Okay.
Unless you want to load your own, then you can make some changes there.
This is more helpful, though, because I was trying to find a high point, and the brown lines weren't helping me.
I have another question. If the performance on this mapping, are you accessing it directly from an internal network, or are we actually going out on the internet? Is the same performance that we're getting here will be demonstrated as you access it for the web?
That depends on your internet speed.
That doesn't
Yeah,
answer the question.
mine's
Is the
not quite as
are you accessing directly the server internally from here?
We host we host most of the data here. There are some ArcGIS services that this is pulling in.
So just keep in mind that when you access the same data on the internet, it's going to be double, triple. It'll be slower. Correct.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, I've noticed that the IP address is 10.61601156, which is referring to an internal network. So therefore,
Yeah,
your
no, that's a
performance-
different tab. That doesn't have anything
So
to do
that's
with
why I'm
this.
asking the question: if you're accessing GIS software internally, because it is a difference. There is a difference from mapping systems.
Yeah, the speed of this will depend on your internet speed.
Okay.
All right, thank you, David. Okay, John Lewis.
All right. Well, I want to go through a presentation I gave to the City Commission the other night on some of the landslide activity that is going on in Oregon City. So, Laura, if you can pull up that PowerPoint for me, that'd be good. Let's see. The other thing, while that's going on, I've brought some brochures that Clackamas County has produced. I guess, well, I'll just hand them either direction. There's an open house that's going to be here Thursday from 7 to 9, and it's on disaster preparedness on the Clackamas River. So it's got a little bit. This just kind of got handed to me and asked that I announce it. So I don't know a lot about it, other than I think it's Clackamas County Emergency Management is sponsoring an open house to really talk a little bit about some of the dams that are on the Clackamas River and what might happen if there were a problem. I noticed that too. So they've got the brochure. I just found it. It's on our website. So it's Thursday, March 9th from 7 to 9 p.m. This brochure is more about information about
And
kind
that's
of
going to be here at
preparedness.
City
for
Hall.
things. Here at City Hall. Right. So with that,
Roll the roller.
roll the roller. Okay. So just real quick, if I can roll the roller the right way. So right now we've got, actually it was pointed out at the commission meeting, we've actually got 6 slides. The slide I'm not showing here is the slide that's on Holcomb, just above Redland Road. So that's one slide that I didn't show on this map, but these are the 5 slides that we have in town right now. And I'll go through each one of them in detail, but starting at the top, there's one off of Jackson Street, just between 14th and 15th. Most of these are all on private property. The one that's on public property is the one that's behind the hospital on Trillium. That's the one that made the news over the last couple of weeks. There's a small one behind some residential homes off of 12th Street and Taylor, and then Barkley Hills. If you're in the Barkley Hills neighborhood, down Peter Skeen, there's one that's it's on private property as well, but it's kind of off the beaten path. You would not see it unless you knew what you were looking for. And then, of course, the Forest Edge Apartments slide location, which has got a lot of history. So this is the Trillium Park Drive from just an observer's perspective. It just kind of looks like a pretty rough road section right now, but this is the one where there was also a single-family home that had 3 renters in it that were displaced because not only was the road involved in the slide, but so was the homes this home had enough damage inside the home that our building official deemed the building dangerous, so they were required to move out of that home. And we've also abandoned the utilities that we can, so really water, the gas, and the power lines have been abandoned. There's still a sanitary sewer line in that stretch of road. It's deeper. We're paying pretty close attention to it as well. And then there's a storm line that crosses the road. But these are just some photos of that location. And this it shows up on, it does. It shows up on this one too. So this here just kind of shows the top edge of that slide. There's a creek that runs down kind of the middle here, and that house is right on the corner. So this is kind of, the hospital sits up on this area up here above Trillium Park Drive. So right now we're monitoring that using survey monuments. So surface monitoring is what we're doing right now. We know this slide has got some history to it. We think it's a deep set slide, but we also think there's a shallower slide within the deeper set slide. So any questions on the Trillium Park Drive landslide before I move to the next one?
Yeah, I had a question. It looks like the construction before was new construction. It looks like new sidewalk, new.
That's right. So
Is that a contributing factor?
I
do you think?
I don't think so. I think this slide has been moving over the last 5 or 6 years, and it had stabilized. So we, in our last year's paving project, we chose to patch it back so the transition wouldn't be so rough. But I don't see, the sidewalk was there before, the pavement was there before. I'm not really sure how that would have contributed to
It
this
just
slide.
looks like new sidewalk. New pavement.
That's the unfortunate part about it, is we just spent some money putting it in there. So now it's obviously
When you
got
put it
some
in, you
changes.
didn't see any kind of separation, any kind of problems in it?
No, not really. So this is the slide on Peter Skeen Way. This one's back kind of in some unimproved areas, private property. Back in the 70s, they installed a sewer line, and they put it right at the top of right up here. So there was a sewer line here, and this slide displaced part of that sewer line, so we've since installed a temporary bypass system, and we're working with the consultant to find a new alternative alignment for that, and that's going to be likely it's worst time of year to have us in there with any kind of construction project. So we'll likely see something happen this summer in that neighborhood, and we'll have to, in the meantime, use a temporary bypass to pump around. This is a private, there's no utilities involved other than there's a creek down in kind of the bottom through here. So this is kind of the headwaters to High School Creek, and this is a property owner that has, there's some of this is in an unimproved public right-of-way. The platting in there's kind of consistent with other areas in Oregon City where you've got some improved right-of-way and unimproved right-of-way. Well, this is definitely unimproved right-of-way, and it's just kind of a natural area. It's in these very steep, typical Oregon City canyons. We see them in Newell Canyon all over the place, and this one here as well. You can tell there's centuries of landslides all along that creek, and this is just another one. And this is one of those areas where if you have if you live in an area like this, or if you in your neighborhood have a lot of these kind of steep canyons, it's always surprising to me how folks that own property on these still will take their yard debris and just kind of dump it off the edge. And then it gets loaded with moisture, and it just becomes like a heavy weight. That most of these slides start from that kind of a situation right there, where they've had probably 10 years of yard debris accumulation, and it just all of a sudden gives way. So that's one of those best management practices. That, along with watching your drainage, making sure your roof drains and area drains are plumbed to the best you can to the bottom of the canyon, so that they're not just dumping on the top of the slope and creating an erosion problem. This is Forest Edge Apartments, and it's hard to get down on that side anymore because there's new owners, and they've done a good job of kind of protecting keeping fencing such that just anybody can't walk down to the lower site. But we got these pictures. These are garages that have been kind of in harm's way for a long time. This is that retaining wall that these are the Berry Hill Apartments up here. So they're undergoing a project that's under construction right now, although they're not working on it right now, but they're building this retaining wall. I reported that to you folks a meeting or two ago. So anyway, it's an active construction site, and these are right in the way of that slide. This is the access road between the two, and that's really kind of becoming continuing to be a problem area for the Forest Edge apartment property. This is the smaller slide that's behind a couple of new homes, and I think just some of the landscaping and terracing that they did there is not. It's resulted in some cracking, and this is now covered with plastic. So these are pictures when we first noticed the slide a couple years ago. That's it. I think I mentioned this before, but the 99E Bluff Waterline Replacement Project was awarded to Wildish Standard Paving Company. So it's really not a paving project, but Wildish has got a couple different kind of crews that do work. And this is the water line at 3rd and Bluff, so it's in the McLaughlin neighborhood. It's the pipeline that's attached to the bluff that you see as you go down 99E. It's $282,000 contract, and most of that's related to traffic control. So we're going to have a big impact on that stretch of 99 for about 10 days. Sometime between Memorial Day and 4th of July, we're going to give we've given the contractor kind of that window of opportunity, and he needs to pick a 10-day time frame within that to get that work done. So we've got to not only replace the water line, but the state has required us to upgrade all the rockfall protection that's on either side of that pipeline. So it'll be a good project, but it'll be one of those projects that's going to be kind of an inconvenience to people who need to use that stretch of 99E. Just wanted to share the 12th and Washington Signal project. We are expected to see 90% plans by the end of March, and we hope to be able to build this project next budget year, so sometime after July 1st. I don't have a detailed schedule on that, but we're budgeting to actually build that signalized intersection. So look for that. And I know the community was concerned and interested in that particular project. Last week, both Laura and I and Mike was there. Who else was there? There was several people at the alternate mobility study, our second meeting actually there were two meetings, one for a technical group and one for a community group. The community, so both of those groups met for the second time last week, two different meetings, and we went through a lot of information about existing counts, travel time through the intersection. It's pretty interesting information. They used technology called BlueMac, where they actually set up receivers on each of the four legs of that intersection, and from that we're able to collect data that measured time that it took vehicles to get from one measuring device through the intersection to the other measuring device, and it accumulated all that data. And it was really using, if you've got a smartphone and you have left on the GPS information on this, it collects that, it picks that up, and that's how it was measuring the time through the intersections. So the consultant then took that data and was able to share it with the group and talk a fair amount about some of the times it takes in terms of delays. And you could definitely see the peak hour delays compared to the non-peak hour. And I'm not going to go into great detail, but Mike, I don't know if you enjoyed that presentation or not, but at the end of the day, we landed on at least a recommendation that was consistent with what the technical advisory committee felt should happen in terms of just accepting additional congestion in that intersection and recognizing that, you know, a lot of the more, I would say, impactful kinds of projects that might develop, let's say a new interchange or something, were just much too expensive for a community like Oregon City or even the state and the county to be able to afford to do, given all the other priorities in the region. So the state had a representative there, the county had a representative there, and I thought at the end of the day, collectively, between the state, the county, and the consultant and the city, I thought we did a pretty good job of acknowledging that you could spend a whole lot of money at that intersection and still not make a big difference, when in fact, you know, the congestion there, while different than what we're used to, is still not as bad as other places in the region. So Mike, is there anything more to that you want to add?
Yeah, a little bit. What I thought was interesting, and I assume he was speaking, it was the ODOT representative, I assume he was speaking for an ODOT perspective and not just his own perspective, but he said something I thought that was pretty interesting, and that is when he looks at problem areas, he's not looking so much at peak times of the day, rush hour times, as he is the flow of business, goods and services, basically, during business hours, as opposed to those peaks. I suppose we're past the time budget-wise where we think we can fix traffic at peak times. So that I thought that was interesting. And the other thing, what it looks like, the recommendation from both groups is we'd be willing to accept that intersection at operating over its peak capacity for a longer period of time each day, whether that's 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours or even 5 hours came up. Hopefully it wouldn't be that much. But it's just basically based on the realization, as John said, that we can't, given the financial constraints and the physical constraints of that site, just can't do what we would do in a perfect world. So, you know, what can we do? And I know, John, you already have on the schedule, you're extending the left turn lanes for eastbound left turns onto 213. right? That's this spring, this summer?
Yes, it's been awarded, so we haven't gotten a schedule from them yet, but yeah,
Okay.
soon, spring.
And a couple of other things to just throw out there that we talked about that could be done for, in a public works perspective, a reasonable amount of money. It's all expensive. One would be, if you think about westbound on Beaver Creek, turning left onto 213 is a very low number of turns, and there's 2 left turn lanes. While at the same time going southbound 213 turning left, the traffic that's trying to get onto Maple Lane overflows the left turn lane and stops up a traffic lane. So there was discussion that it wouldn't be too expensive to convert one of those 2 left turn lanes so that the Maple Lane left turn could be all the way stacked back to 213. So when you made that left turn, you'd already be in your next turn lane and not blocking the other traffic. And another possibility would be westbound. I have to stop and think about this and give me a chance to catch up and everybody else. So westbound Beaver Creek turning right onto northbound 213. Right now you come around the corner and you're stopped. So add a merge lane that would go some distance down 213 so you could merge your way in instead of having to stop. So there's one more meeting, at least one more meeting, and that'll be the technical group that John mentioned and the community group together to try to come up with a firm recommendation. But the 2 things that were interesting was that ODOT comment and then also what John was talking about with the Bluetooth. So there's a lot of cars have Bluetooth built into them, so it's tracking the cars as they go through, and, as well as cell phones. And they said they missed 11%. They do an actual physical count also, and they only missed 11% of the traffic. So 89% of what's going through there's some sort of Bluetooth that it can track, which is A, good, and B, maybe a little scary. That's it.
Okay, great. Other than that, we're deep in budget cycle right now. So, in fact, if I could excuse myself, unless you have any other questions.
Any
for me,
questions
I'd like
for
to work on
John
my
before he
budget.
leaves? Jesse?
Yeah, sorry, John. Regarding the Third and Bluff pipe, is that a sewer pipe?
Water.
It's water. Okay, so how much of the city or neighborhood does that serve? How important is that line? I'm just curious. I walk by it every day.
Yeah. So it's probably less important for the upper level of McLaughlin neighborhood, but more important for the downtown. It's one of 2 feeds for the downtown, and in particular, it goes through the mill site. So at one point in time, it was, for the mill, it was a critical feed, but it still is for the Main Street and at Fifth, that end of Main Street. That's really one of 2 services for that area. So it's critical.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for John?
I have a slide question, but it may not be in our area. When you come down the south end of 99 and you turn left towards Gamby, right away almost there's a slide going off of 99. Is that Oregon City or?
That's State Highway, and
is that okay, so they're taking care of that, or?
they are. We had a meeting with the state. Tony and I did last week, end of last week. The mayor actually asked them about that slide, and they didn't give us a definite answer, but I know they've got a fair amount of equipment and a lot of traffic control, just kind of keeping people away from that area. But they didn't provide us a specific answer on how long before they thought they'd get in there to fix that. But I suspect that's a high priority for them because it's such a dangerous spot right there anyway. So.
Right, that corner.
Yeah.
There was somebody else right over here. Steve?
Yeah. Is there any update on the Molalla work that's going to be done because of the grant?
Yeah, the Molalla Avenue completion project. So we got the grant, which I think this group has heard before. So they've asked us for some follow-up information to kind of verify that our numbers work for their, from their perspective as well. But we haven't heard, other than we know the grant cycle is from 2019 to 2021. We've submitted a request that we move forward with that sooner than that. And we haven't heard necessarily that, so we're just giving that a little bit of time. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll try and keep our potholes patched.
Good luck with that.
Try.
All right, thank you, John.
Great, thank you.
All right, City Commission. Tony, are you doing that one?
Yeah, I'll take a shot.
All
at it.
right.
Thank you. So I think we passed around the 2017-2019 goals, priorities, and milestones for the City Commission. Now, we haven't been able to get this into the booklet yet, but we'll have those, and we'll make sure those get distributed once those are completed. So back in mid-January, Friday and Saturday, the City Commission met with staff, and we had their goal-setting retreat at the Museum of the Oregon Territory, where we went through and through a process of interviews with them and leading up to the retreat, try to identify goals that we'd identified as staff of things that we'd heard or been identified over the previous year and a half or so, or outstanding projects or projects that we know that we need to accomplish in the upcoming biennium. And then engage with the commissioners on additional goals that they'd like to talk about amongst themselves. And so we went through that goal-setting retreat and produced the document for the 2017-2019 fiscal year. And so this was adopted by the commission at their last meeting. And from this serves as a blueprint for how we create our two-year budget. So that's exactly what we're working on right now, is preparing that budget for the budget hearings that'll start, I believe, in April for adoption by hopefully before July 1 when the new fiscal year starts for the next 2 years. And so when you go through these goals and priorities, you'll see some that are familiar projects, some that we've accomplished certain parts of it, but we still have more work to do, such as the Cove or the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, or some of the sewer moratorium areas that we're working on. You'll also see some things that we've been able that'll be new, like a tourism plan. We received some funding to do a new tourism plan for the city, really focusing on economic development and what those opportunities are. One of the best ways for economic development is really working with the businesses that are here so that they can expand and stay in Oregon City. Give them those opportunities to create those employment jobs that we need right here. We took quite a bit of look at our facilities, including the Public Works facility, relocating community development from its current location, potentially looking at the annex building on Mount Pleasant School that's there, right, kind of the new, well, I guess they'd call it the newer one, built probably in the 80s, on that site closer to the corner there of Warner Parrott and Lynn. The court facility, the police station. So the commission indicated they'd like to go back out to the voters with that question about being able to issue debt to construct that facility. The parks maintenance facility up at the Mountain View Cemetery, and getting that facility rebuilt. It's currently not usable by our Parks Department, so it's something that we do need to address. And then really looking at what our revenue options are for trying to catch up on some of the deferred maintenance that we have in throughout the city with our parks facilities. There are some on here that are new that we see as whether trying to address some of the affordable housing options. And so it's not necessarily thinking about affordable housing, but really trying to provide more price points where folks can get in and stay in the community, whether that be through rent or accessory dwelling units or cluster homes, or are there barriers right now in our code that really limit those from being constructed? Because it's not something we're seeing a whole lot of currently in the market that we're in. A lot of work and discussion about the homelessness issue here in Oregon City and how do we address that. We've been able to identify a police officer will be a homeless liaison officer. So if you think about, we've got 50 plus officers on the street, multiple of them having different contacts with different folks on issues. And so really trying to have one person who can really be the clearinghouse and create those relationships with the homeless community, the service providers, as well as the calls and the businesses and the homes that are being impacted. Predominantly we're seeing it in downtown in McLaughlin. And so really trying to be proactive in trying to address some of the issues that we're seeing Just don't think this is going to be something that goes away. I think this is a new part of the society that we're going to live in, and homelessness will be a part of that. And so how we address that is really important. The sewer moratorium, you may recall we declared a moratorium on 7 areas throughout the city. Right now we've lifted 6 of those, so we plan to finish up the last one in the fall of this year, doing the design work on that right now. We also have a stormwater master plan that needs to be updated, so we'll be working on that. And then one of the things the commission really wanted to have us take a look at was a subsection of the waterfront master plan, and that's Clackamas Park. So Clackamas Park right now, everyone's probably aware of, we were able to do repairs to the boat ramp on the Clackamas River. It's a limited term project. We're hoping to get 5 years out of that boat ramp. So we've been working with the state on construction of a new permanent boat ramp in Clackamas Park. Part of that, the state requirement was to relocate it a little bit closer to the Willamette. So that, in conjunction with how the RV park operates, plus the city owns a piece of property on the other side of the street from Clackamas Park. So we were asked to take another look at that whole area and try to come up with maybe a little bit better defined plan for Clackamas Park and how that should be developed in the future. Some other things that we've been working on that are longer term budgetary impact would be a new information governance system. How really trying to move to paperless with the retention requirements that we have as state government, as a local government. How do you track these things? How do you make sure you're on a retention schedule? You meet that retention schedule, whether it be for documents, contracts, email, all this information that we have. There are retention requirements by the state, and making sure that not only we're retaining what we need to, but we're getting rid of things when we're supposed to as well, as mandated by law. And really focusing on how to increase and connect with the community and receive feedback through a community engagement plan, and then trying to develop an operation and volunteer plan for the Ermitinger House. We're working on finishing that up with some of the interior work, and we'd really like to find a sustainable way to keep that facility being used, showcased for the community. One thing we've talked about and really do need to gain some traction on is deferred water infrastructure. Many of you may or may not be aware of, in our charter we have a limitation on how much our water rate can go up, and it's capped by the charter. And what that's done is it's put us in a deferred maintenance situation on critical water infrastructure. With a community as old as ours, pipes are starting to come due to be replaced. And so really trying to come up with a long-term plan for water rates and hopefully go out to the voters at some point to consider implementing the plan that we come up with to try to address the deferred water maintenance issues that we have. One of the other big ones is a new permitting system. We operate on a system what's called Eden, and that's how we issue building permits, track planning files, public works, finance, code enforcement. The system's pretty antiquated, so we've been looking at alternatives to really streamline that permitting process, but then also it would really link in our review process so that you can do things a little bit more efficiently electronically, as well as being able to tie into the other departments, whether it be engineering, planning, building, finance. So that is something that we are currently have an RFP out and did receive bids on that we're reviewing. So it's just kind of a broad overview of what the commission's been looking at for their goals as we roll into the budget season here. I think it's a ambitious plan, but something that we can, accomplish over the next 2 years when we roll into this our next work plan. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, just once again,
Georgia, can you make sure you're talking into the microphone?
I don't know Oregon City very well, so
Microphone.
that's why I have more questions. I haven't really been here that long.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look up Ermitinger House, because I didn't know what it was, it said McLaughlin House. Is that the same thing?
They're two separate facilities. The McLaughlin House is right across the street, right over here, and Ermitinger is a second building over by the fire station.
And what do they do there?
They're historic buildings that we've rehabilitated, and so the thing, what do you do there exactly? It's coming up with an operation plan for those facilities to utilize them.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, Tony, I have a quick question in referring to the water bill. Since the bond issue for the police department failed,
Mm-hmm.
the money being collected currently on the water bill was supposed to go towards the police department or some. Since it failed, what are we still? How can you reconcile collecting the water bill fee if the people already voted that we're not, that you need to come up with a different plan on how to fund this police department? So couldn't that water bill fee be discontinued because we're no longer going that route?
At this point, the question before the voters was, per the Oregon City Charter, if Oregon City is going to take on debt, we have to go to a vote of the people. So the fee was not on the ballot. So the $6.50 community safety advancement fee will be continued to be collected. We have a mandate by the state to upgrade our critical facilities, the police station, by 2022 to current seismic standards. So we'll continue to collect those funds. It's set aside in a specific police building line item. It's not it can't be just spent on water or parks. It's specifically being collected for a police facility.
Which goes to my point, since you have to come up with a different plan how to fund it, doesn't it create a problem how to justify the fees that are being collected currently to afford the bond? I was assuming it was told to us that the money being collected was to collect the money for the preparation of the bond. There was a preceding expense there, or the cost of the bond. It's been projected. The explanation behind it there's several of them, and they've modified from going from $5 to $6.50. So the process has changed. So this is the question that I'm being faced with: is that, well, if we're not doing the police department, why are you still collecting money?
Well, I guess if we're continually unable to get authority, so the $6.50 that collected, if the bond measure was successful it would have been successful in November, that $6.50 would have paid the bond payments. It would have paid the payback. So at this point, the decision has been made to continue to collect that fee, and if we're continuing to be unsuccessful, we would save up enough money till we could pay for a building with cash.
So it sounds like a slush fund at this point, because there's no direction, there's no actual directive of why this money is being collected, other than we might be using it for future.
Well,
because that's what it sounds like.
Well, I guess I'm not sure how else to explain it. It's specifically set aside to build a police facility.
Right. But what if we never get there? Is what you're facing.
Well, eventually, after enough years, there would be enough cash to build it without taking out a bond.
Okay.
All right, let's move on from that question. Any other questions? Linda?
I have two. Are we no longer using these? Are we just shouting out when we have a question? Or are we still using these?
We need to use those.
Okay,
so,
okay.
but thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. And then my question is, how do I find out
Yeah, we can never
a certain one of these? If I'm really interested in one of these, who do I contact, or how do I contact to find out where you're at on? These are all marvelous goals, but if maybe one or two of them that I have a particular interest. How do I do that?
You could probably either contact Katie Riggs or myself, and if it's one where it's like, which department's responsible for that?
Yeah.
We've identified which staff members are responsible for these.
Okay, that's it.
Any other questions on this? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to public comments for items not on the agenda. We have one comment, and that is Bob LaSalle. Come on up.
My name is Bob LaSalle. I live in Oregon City, and the budget was brought up, which kind of put a spark in my mind. Is there any provision for providing more money to the neighborhoods for notification of the neighborhood meetings and communications with the neighbors?
We're still working on the numbers.
Okay, because we need more money. I think everybody agree with that. And then also, I think you're talking about the boat ramp.
Correct.
I don't know if you've considered this, but it could be some money made by charging for ramp fees, which most boat owners assume is going to happen. I used to be a boat owner, and just about everywhere we went, there was a launching fee with the honor system. So,
Yeah.
just a suggestion.
Sure. So I got just two things real quick. So on the budget, so essentially what I've asked all the departments to do is come back with, so we kind of have two parts of the budget, the personnel side. A lot of that for us is controlled through the contracts that we have with either the police union or the ASME union. And so whether it's the COLA, there are just certain benefits in there, medical and whatnot, that are either pre-agreed to, so we know what they are over the next couple of years. But then we also have the operations capital side, and so they're coming back with essentially zero budgets increases from the current fiscal year in what they're turning in. Obviously, there'll be some adds. Like, for example, we were able to bring on, we negotiated with the school district. They're going to pay 50% of a second school resource officer to have in the middle school. So there'll be little adds like that, which the commission has either identified or have prioritized. But essentially, if you don't have an add out of these goal sessions, you're coming in with a zero budget. A couple of reasons for that. One, we have the PERS. I think everybody's seen that in the news. It's about a $500,000 per year increase to the city, of which about $300,000 comes from the general fund, and that's per year over the next 6 years. So for the general fund, that's $1.8 million over 6 years. The second one is right-of-way fees. There's currently legislation proposed down in Salem that would limit or potentially remove some of the right-of-way fees that we collect, which could have a, it's hard to say, $200,000 to $500,000 hit to the general fund. And then closing the urban renewal district. So currently we are in circuit court as to that question. But currently what we've done is when that passed in November, we stopped spending any money from urban renewal other than paying down the debt that's outstanding. But essentially we absorbed about $300,000 to the general fund. So there's still years to pay down that debt before that rolls back in if that district were closed to the general fund. So just trying to put together the not only the 2-year budget, but looking out over the 4-year, 5-year into the 6-year, what are steps that we can take now that are hopefully smaller and less impactful to services that we provide to prepare ourselves for those out years. So we're putting the puzzle together, but I still have your email with that request in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, and sorry, my second part to that was why don't we charge? There's a thing called recreational immunity, and there was a recent Supreme Court decision, but that I won't get into. But essentially, what's behind recreational immunity is that if we provide recreational services for free, we have what's called recreational immunity. If someone gets hurt playing on our playground or walking on one of our paths, if we start to charge, we lose our recreational ability. So it's like, where's the cost? Is it worth charging versus taking on the liability? But
You probably wouldn't collect that much money. Just one lawsuit.
Just one. Just one vote, and yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
That's great information, Tony. Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda, approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, changes? Anyone noticed? All
We
right.
approve the minutes.
Second from someone?
I'll make a second.
Linda? All right. This is one that everybody can just all in favor. If you have, raise your hand. Any opposed? Wait, was that an opposed? Sorry, Bill, I just had to ask.
I just slow.
I know. All right, any abstain? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. You okay with that, Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got it.
Got it. Okay. Whoops, I went down too far on the agenda.
Yeah.
Maybe this will work better. Sorry, I don't have a current agenda. All right. Grievance Committee. Because I was named in that, I will turn this over to Barbara with help from Laura to form a grievance committee.
All right, thank you very much. So I apologize for my voice. We received a grievance for the CIC to review. The first step of the grievance is to form a grievance committee. And as identified in the memos, which you may recognize from the same process that we went through a couple years back, we form a grievance committee, and anyone who is mentioned in the grievance at all cannot be on the committee. Everybody else is up for the committee, and I have a box that we will pull cards out of to see who makes the committee. The committee will meet at 5 p.m. The Mondays before this hearing, and so the first Monday of every month. The purpose of the grievance committee is to review the grievance itself. So we're not going to talk about today what the merits of the grievance are or anything like that. That's up to the grievance committee to review. So once the grievance committee meets, the first thing they're going to do, what's that?
The first meeting's tonight.
The first meeting is tonight. The first thing that we're going to do is to sign a letter that I've pre-written. In our code, it tells us the first thing we want to do is to recommend that the parties reconcile with mediation. And so we send this letter out. Then last time this happened, we never got anything back. But any of the parties could have given us something in writing saying, I would like you to still process the grievance. Either it didn't work or what they're unwilling to meet. For whatever reason, please continue to process the grievance. So if we get that in writing back, then the grievance committee will start to meet. When they meet, it'll look familiar because it'll look like sort of like a planning commission hearings where we have people testify and we have identified time limits that they testify. And anyone could talk about the grievance in any way that they want and participate in the grievance meetings. Then the grievance committee comes together and forms a recommendation. And then after they form the recommendation, they get to write up the rationale for that recommendation. And then they come back to the CIC. And the CIC actually gets to vote on a recommendation. So there'll be more of those hearing type procedures at the CIC level. And so the grievance is open in front of the grievance committee, but when you get to the CIC, no new information can be submitted. The record is closed. So the CIC is looking at the same information that the grievance committee looks at. Then the grievance committee votes, the CIC votes and forms a recommendation. There'll be some written findings for that. And then we mail that out, and that recommendation is final. That cannot be appealed. The city commission can reach and pull that up to the city commission, but nobody can appeal it to the city commission. So it's a final recommendation. It's not particularly binding, but it is a recommendation. So tonight we are going to pick our grievance committee members. Of the CIC, the people who cannot participate in the grievance committee include Amy, Karen, Mark, Shelley, and Betty, and Brian. And everybody else gets to pull a card from this box. We have 13 people available. 5 people get to sit on the card. Yes.
May I be excused from that also?
Nope.
Yes, he can.
Because,
Yes, he can.
Hold on. Whoa.
because of Amy.
So,
might be biased.
Well, okay.
Well, yeah.
So, I can pull up our code, but anyone can be anyone who. Let me throw it up on the screen real quick. So, as we know, our grievance committee is not working. There we go. So as we know, our grievance committee process is identified in 2.3.060 of our code, 2.30. So under 230B1, any member who is party to or is directly impacted by the grievance or the recommendation must recuse themselves from being chosen from this committee. So the people identified were identified in writing for the grievance, so that's why I pulled them out.
He's a family member.
So, Barbara?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I assume the yes means that the family member gets pulled out of that so that they're also unable to participate in the
Yes.
grievance committee. All right. So, with that, I'm going to walk around with this nice box. The box is full of cards. The cards have no names, they just have color. And so there's two colors. One is blue and one is, I don't know what color it is, reddish. And this means that you are not on the grievance committee, and this means that you are on the grievance committee. 5 of these, and now 7 of these. All right. And then... All right, so again, same process as we did last time. Any questions about the process for how we process grievances or anything like that? No? Okay.
Did you say red's in and blue's safe?
Uh-oh. 2 blue ones.
Then it
Odds
now-
are getting worse.
Chair last time, I don't deserve to be on the
Oh. The odds are really getting worse.
You could be a primary or an alternate, it doesn't matter.
Well, then you better get it done quick.
Where are the cards?
What'd you get?
They're in there someplace.
Uh-oh.
Clear.
Good and down.
Okay.
Did anybody get your field color down?
I was a juror, jury duty.
How many come out? 2?
Only 3 people left to choose.
Hey, last time the people didn't show
3.
up, got chosen.
It's a yes.
I could feel
There's 4.
All right, that's all 5 cards.
It is? I saw 4. Who's got the 5th one?
There's 2 of them here. Somebody else want one?
There's 2 of them.
Is there 2?
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Go twice.
Oh, I was
Raise
going to
your
say
hand
there
if you
had
have
to
a
be
pink
one
card.
more.
Yeah, you only have 4.
4, okay.
Oh.
Gotta read.
Dun,
top.
dun, dun.
No, it's fine. All right.
Oh, who's not here tonight? That's their call.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, because last time we picked them.
Brian.
Yes, Brian Boyce.
Brian
No,
cannot
Brian.
participate in the grievance
For some
committee.
reason.
Who else is not here tonight?
All right.
Gwen Harris. Harris Gwen.
Yep, so we have Harris Gwen,
Available.
and we
Laura.
also have Gordon Wilson.
Laura, I would be much more comfortable if you took one piece out and redrew.
And who do?
Unfortunately.
Redid the drawing.
Well, no. So what it is she just pulled 2 of the same color.
You had one red too many in
No,
there.
no, because we only have 4. We need to pull a 5th. So the 5th member will either be Gordon or Harris. So we need someone to pull for Gordon or Harris to figure out who the 5th member is. So we have 4
Let's see, the ones from their same neighborhoods.
So we have 4
Well,
people.
Harris is not available to participate.
Unfortunately,
so-
Karen, you're not able to rule on this particular item
Mark,
because
Mark,
you've been.
and-
because
Barbara,
you're not
Barbara, you're
necessarily-
chairing on this.
Barbara.
Yeah, we need to put the cards up. You need to ask permission to speak. Mark, you can't just speak out.
If I could have a moment to speak.
Also, we don't want to talk about the merits, just about the process of picking members.
Just the process.
Correct.
So can someone step forward to pick out the 5th card?
I will.
Someone else.
Who are you?
Who are we picking? We're picking a card for. So I have one question. One is can Harris participate? If not, Gordon is the other member.
Yes, I suppose that then Gordon is the only remaining.
Yeah, so we have two people, Gordon and Harris. So if
And
Harris can't participate, it is Gordon.
Okay, so it's Gordon.
So are we saying that Harris can't participate?
Harris cannot participate.
Can you clarify why?
He has personal health issues.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So then, raise your hand if you're one of the 5 members again, just so I can record it. So we have Mike and Barbara. All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. So unless there are any other questions about the grievance committee, there was information that was included in the agenda. Everything will be in a public setting. Everything will be recorded and open to the public and very transparent. Any items that receive regarding the grievance will save up. They will give it to the grievance committee as they get them. And every time we have a CIC meeting, they are required to update the CIC on how things are going with the grievance committee. Do you have a question?
And that was 6 p.m.
It's on. It's
of the next CIC meeting.
At 5 p.m. the evening of the next. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a question for, if I have permission to speak, obviously.
I'll put your card up and then I can call.
I pushed the button on the electronic, so when the electronic thing
Oh,
is available. So if I have permission to speak, I have a question.
You have permission to speak.
Thank you. In reference to the calendar and what is, we have 2 sets of criterias. We have the bylaws that were approved in 2013 that refers to 30 days, taking one meeting and 30 days to do another meeting. Has that been discarded in reference to the municipal code that doesn't have any kind of scheduling of 30 days of each meeting? Because there's in the existing bylaws, it says 30 days for not the municipal codes, not what's in the municipal. That's different. It's totally different than what was approved in bylaws. Question is, there's information in our bylaws, CIC bylaws, that isn't in the municipal, like the 30-day schedules. If you know what I'm talking about.
That is a great question. We no longer have bylaws. When we adopted Chapter 2.30 of the Oregon City Municipal Code, we replaced the bylaws, so there are no bylaws.
Okay,
so it's only
there's
what's in the
no
code.
reference to the schedule. My reference was more to the 30-day schedule because it was plainly in the bylaws. It was plainly identified as the first set of meetings was going to within 30 days. The second set of meetings was supposed to be done in the next 30 days, where that issue is not being expressed in the municipal code. So I was just making sure that this process doesn't elongate into or is fast-tracked. You know, there's a point of doing this stuff correctly.
Yeah, so the bylaws are no longer valid, so we'll do the meeting today so we could get the letter out tomorrow once it's signed by the members. And then if we do receive anything in writing from anyone in the grievance telling us to continue to process the grievance, then they'll meet right before every CIC meeting, so it'll be monthly meetings. And they'll be, again, open to the public, and we'll publish an agenda.
Okay. Now's the time where we do roundtable, and we go around, for those of you that are new, and update the CIC on what's happening in your neighborhood so that we can share information. You can pass if you don't have anything to say, or if you want to let one person speak for the neighborhood, that's fine. So let's start on this end this time, and we'll start South End. Gary?
We had our cleanup. We didn't get to do it on the 11th, so we did it during the week on a Tuesday. That worked out really well. We've been looking at maybe volunteering to clean up the other end of South End Road, down by the other end for 99. And the county really doesn't want us to do that. They don't want volunteers working on that end of the road because it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Also, we've got we're looking into maybe having the the city police or the county, one of them, maybe block off the road for a little period of time while we are there. It's just a dangerous situation. We did get cones from the Public Works, and we put those out along with our Adopt a Road signs. And that helped a lot, I think. It just keeps people aware all the way down the hill that we are there. And it takes a couple hours, so we picked up a lot of stuff. And the next day, it looked like we hadn't gone through in certain places. So it is frustrating, but I don't know if we'll conquer it, but we're working at it.
Bill?
Next meeting for the South End Neighborhood Association is on Thursday the 16th. We're still working on refining the program, but look forward to seeing everybody who can attend.
All right, Jesse?
Thank you. The last meeting of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association was actually last Thursday. I was unable to attend, but our steering committee in April will be Thursday the 6th at 7, probably at the Firehouse, as usual. The agenda for the meeting that I missed last week included an update from our police liaison, Detective Justin Young, as well as an update on the Lotterat Park planning process, which is in our neighborhood. If anyone wants more information about that, let me know and I can get you hooked up with our neighborhood representative who's helping with that project. And I think that's about all. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw?
Well, Tony kind of took care of all the commission needs.
Did he
here.
lick your lolly?
What he did in 5 minutes took us a day and a half and a retreat. So it does. Even though he made it sound pretty, romantic, it just wasn't. So, thank you.
Anything else, Tony?
No, thanks.
All right, Laura?
No additional updates.
Okay. Joyce?
The Hillendale Neighborhood Association met on Tuesday, February 7th, and heard from a developer for the 11 housing structures that are going to be built next to West Leland Park. And because the ballot measure failed twice for them to put in a nice road for access to the park and then be able to put a line across the park they could reach the stormwater retention pond, that stormwater line now has to go down Leland Road. It's going to be kind of an inconvenience to people when they do build that, but there's going to be they're going to try to get all the work done at once that they have to do on the water and sewer and stormwater lines along Leland Road when they do build those 11 units next to West Leland Park. And so despite what some people thought, if they voted it down that they couldn't build, that's not the case. They will still be building. On Thursday, March 2nd, last Thursday, there was an Oregon City Heritage Day meeting called kind of at the last minute by the Hardings. And this is because they've been approached by the Rose Festival Committee to have Oregon City have a Heritage Day as a sanctioned event for the Rose Festival. And so there is a group that is considering that, considering an entry in the Rose Festival Parade in Portland, and then having June 24th be Oregon City Heritage Day, where the museums would all be open and free, and hopefully some activities. But we need volunteers, and so we may be calling on you if you're interested at all in working on heritage things. Be sure to take some time to talk to me. And I can give you the Harding's email address if there's something specific that you would like to work on that. And then for Hillendale, tomorrow night is our steering committee meeting. And as you know, we normally meet in restaurants, but again, this month we will not, because we have 3 land use issues that are going to be presented. One of those is just a simple parking lot restriping on Beaver Creek Road. Another one, Clackamas Women's Services, that want to put a temporary building next to their location on Warner Milne, temporary office building. And then the big one is Metro is going to do a land use presentation regarding the building of the trails in Newell Creek Canyon and the buildings that are going to be on the trailhead. So all of you are invited. This is tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at Living Hope Church, if you want to have your last say in what the trails are going to look like down in Newell Creek Canyon. And we will also at that time be electing a new CIC representative from Hillendale. as Faith had to resign due to other things going on in her life right now. So that's what Hillendale's been up to.
All right. Barbara?
Well, the Park Place neighborhood had their general meeting on February 29th. And we also had the Planning Commission meeting on February 29th.
8th.
What?
He's saying 8th.
8th?
There was no 29th.
There was no 29th, you're right. Sorry. Correction.
It was a great meeting. No one attended.
Actually, we had we had the steering committee, the general meeting, and about 17 or 18 people came to that. And then we our meeting was at 6:30, so then we went from there to the Planning Commission meeting, which the rest of our neighborhood was at, in regard to the annexation of the Sears property. So there were a lot of issues that are concerning the neighbors, and we're working through all of that, hopefully, and it could stop raining at any time. The next meeting will be March 12th. Is it the 12th? 15th.
This is Sunday.
Okay, so it's
So March 20th will be a steering committee.
March 20th is the steering committee meeting. And it will be at the Alliance Academy. Okay?
Okay. Gaffney Lane, we didn't have a meeting. We are going to have a steering committee meeting. We're still working on the date for that. We did a survey asking if people wanted to meet more often, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback for that. So we're going to work out the details and give that a try. They would like to try to meet maybe every other month, similar to what Barkley Hills did, I think, last year. Did you guys started meeting more often? Yeah. So it's hard to remember quarterly, and if you miss one, then you haven't been there for 6 months. So don't know if we have enough money to send out notices, but we're going to try to meet more often. I just want to also remind everybody about that Newell Creek meeting. It's not just for Hillendale. It was for all the property owners. There's people in Barkley Hills that were also notified. And then as the CIC, we were also notified. So an email went out today with the attachment that shows some pretty cool maps and a little bit of information for that. And I believe that is all I have right now.
Okay.
Karen?
And Rivercrest will be meeting a week from Thursday, and interestingly, one of the topics is meeting more frequently. And also, we're hoping that we've found a secretary so I can quit playing like I know how to be a secretary. And nothing particularly more. I had a thank you for John tonight. Lynn Avenue, right before the snow and ice started, was showing some distinct potholes. I understand why during the snow and ice they didn't get filled, because they were worse when it went away. But they got right on them as soon as the weather improved. So
They still holding?
They're holding so far.
Hey, lucky. Mike?
I mentioned last month that there was a postcard issue for our last Caulfield Neighborhood Association meeting. I got my postcard about 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
for a January 24th meeting. So I don't know what went wrong. Yeah, and
Have you talked to
unfortunately
Katie Durfee?
they're not stamped. I think Robert did.
Okay.
They're not stamped with a mail date or anything, so I don't know when it got mailed. Anyway, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 28th at 6:45. We're now meeting at the bus barn facility, the school district bus barn, right behind the high school. And if you haven't seen that, that is a beautiful facility.
I don't have to go through the dark at BCT?
No, and so you can come to our meeting. Tuesday the 28th at 6:45, and we will be hearing from our city finance director, Wyatt Parno.
Oh.
That's it.
All right, Mark?
I'll pass my time to our new CIC representative, Shelley.
Okay. Steve?
So the next general meeting of Park Place will not be until May 15th. We have 2 steering committee meetings in March and April. Let's see, there's a Shred Day, Oregon City Shred Day is April 22nd, and the Oregon City Cleanup Day is April 29th. It's great that they're not the same day. Up.
Okay, so you can shred and then clean up. Okay, Shelley.
Okay, Berkeley Hills is having their next general meeting next Tuesday, March 14th. Our primary speaker is going to be Ms. Karen Morey, giving us a history of the Mountain View Cemetery and some of the interesting people buried there.
Oh.
In addition to that, we've had 2 requests of local entrepreneurs hoping to start new businesses in the Berkeley Hills neighborhood. The rumor is those businesses may be related to cannabis, so come and see what that says about the neighborhood. And then the annual picnic for Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association is going to be on August 5th, which is the Saturday right after the National Night Out. So we're going to start now advertising it and talking about it and finding out what people want to do, because it's been growing consistently for the last 2 years.
All right. Dennis?
Yes. Kanema, we had a general meeting on April 16th. Kudos to 2 of our lead, Tori
Wait,
Goodman.
you had a meeting April 16th?
We had a general meeting on the 16th, and we had it at the library too, which is I think our new.
Couldn't be April though. We're confused, Dennis.
Oh, April.
It was February.
February.
Okay.
Sorry.
February.
Sorry. Am I moving too fast?
I mean, it could be May.
Obviously, I don't use a calendar. Anyway, last month we had a meeting, and kudos go out to 2 of our lead, Tori Goodman and Jessica Smith. They managed to persevere and get a bylaws committee to pass a using the inspiration from McLaughlin in terms of like a format and a document that would be a good model and represent most of the neighbors in our neighborhood. And we were able to pass it forward, and on that meeting at the library, we all read it through, and we're hoping that in April we'll be able to ratify it. So those of you who've been here long enough, you know that we've been struggling with this for a number of years, and it would be wonderful if that all would come to pass. We're optimistic about it. It was a good meeting. Again, mentioning the library, an excellent place to have a general meeting. It's just, and it's a delight to be there. It's well lit, and there's lots of room for all of our neighbors to join in there. We also had a visit, a lecture from Jonathan Archibald on he was here last CIC meeting, and he gave a good demonstration on that. And water concerns our little neighborhood, so that was a good thing. And anything else?
No, that was great.
So our next meeting is the 20th.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Linda?
No, I'll pass.
All right, Fern.
As many of you may know, we do joint meetings with Hillendale. So our next meeting will be just as Joyce presented it tonight. No need to add to it. And if you want to take the opportunity to go visit a neighboring neighborhood, tomorrow might be a good time with Metro and a couple of other items on the meeting. That's about it.
That's great. All right. Anything else, Georgia? No?
So even though it's not one of our general meetings and postcards did not go out for this because it was just supposed to be steering committee, we do want people to come hear the Metro presentation tomorrow night, 7:00 p.m. at Living Hope Church.
The same day as the city hall meeting too.
All right. Anything else? Has anybody had? All right. With that, we are adjourned.